Welcome to On the Entrepreneur's Journey, the show where we explore how founders and leaders build companies that scale, evolve, and eventually run without them. I'm your host, Peter Santry, a former Wall Street executive turned leadership team coach. Today, I'm joined by Jackie Bondanza, founder of Houndstown USA, a pet care franchise that has grown to more than 100 locations. Jackie's story is a great example of the full entrepreneurial journey, starting at the ground level, building the model, scaling the franchise system, and then creating the leadership structure that allowed her to step out of the day-to-day and into the owner's box. In this conversation, we'll talk about the rise of the pet care category, what it really takes to scale a franchise brand, and what Jackie is thinking about as she enters her next chapter. So, Jackie, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much for having me.
Good. So, we talked about this earlier. I looked at your background, and you were commuting in from Long Island. You were an editor in a book publisher, and what led you to leave that and start Houndstown, and what did the earliest version of the business look like before it became a franchise platform?
Yeah, so like we were joking about right before the show started, part of the reason Houndstown exists is because of the Long Island Railroad commute. And my previous life, commuting 5 hours round trip on the Long Island Railroad into New York City to like you mentioned, work as a book editor. And I did that for many, many years. That was the first decade of my career. And 2013, in the summer of 2013, I moved all the way out to Long Island, which is a good 2 hour commute to New York City, and I still had my job. And so I found myself commuting all of this time to make very little money in book publishing and editing. You really don't make a ton of money. It's a passion career for sure. And so I had just adopted a dog named Maggie and moved from New York City to this bigger house on Long Island, and thought that that was my best next step in life until I got there and realized that it wasn't. And I had this, now I had two dogs and no one to help me manage them. And Maggie, the dog I had just adopted, turned out to be leash aggressive and dog selective, or at least I thought. I had used one of our competitors in New York City for a couple of months, and they kind of labeled her all of these things. And so when I moved all the way out to Long Island, I was commuting. I wasn't home 14, 15 hours a day, and I really needed help with her. And I was having a challenge managing her and interacting her with other dogs. And so one day, my mom, who was nice enough to come over and let my dog out while I was commuting home, she came over and let Maggie out with her dog, Bella, and Maggie attacked my mom's dog and sent her to the vet. And Bella had to get all these stitches. And so, I thought, how on
Wow.
earth am I going to manage this dog? I was faced with the possibility that I might have to give her back to the shelter that I got her from, which was a horrible feeling. And so one day I went to Google and I Googled dog trainer near me, and up came this ad. I joke that it was like this obnoxious kind of like snake oil salesman ad that was like, if your dog, bites other people and nips other people and jumps, we can help. And I thought, there's no way. Like, who do these people think that they are? But I made an appointment anyway because I thought, what the heck, I was kind of desperate, and so I made an appointment, and it was this small little mom and pop store called Houndstown. And Mike Gould ran it. He ended up becoming my co-founder, of course, and we got married and then divorced. But he had started this little dog training and daycare business after he retired from running the NYPD Canine unit. So he had a tremendous amount of experience in commercial dog management and in managing dogs that were labeled aggressive and everything else. And so I went over and I had made an appointment with Maggie for Maggie and to get her evaluated. And basically, Mike said there's nothing wrong with the dog. The issue is how you're managing her. And he said, get on the train, go to work, and by the time you get to work, we're going to send you a video of Maggie in a play group. And again, I thought, no way, because a competitor of ours, a very successful competitor of ours, had told me that the dog was basically not manageable. And so lo and behold, I get a video of Maggie playing, tail wagging, interacting just fine. And in that moment, I had a tremendous sense of relief as a dog owner, and I knew that Maggie's life had basically been saved, and that at least there was one person, one company, one resource that could really help me manage my dog and understood dogs really to the degree that is necessary to be a responsible pet care company. And so fast forward 3 months, I ended up leaving my career, and Mike and I founded the franchise business together.
Wow. Wow. It's incredible. Just a need, met by somebody and, it drives a huge change in your life. Really interesting. But then, basically, you said to me that you were essentially a franchisee of your own concept. And so, you're not a franchise at this point. You're kind of one store. And what did that teach you about the business that you could never have learned from a distance?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I left my career, and we were not immediately successful in the franchising business. It took years to build. I started out working in the store because I wanted to know everything I could know and needed to know about what does the brick and mortar business look like. So I was there at 6 in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, picking up dog poop, managing the team, grouping dogs, learning about our dog management philosophy. I wanted and needed to learn the business from the inside out. And then I could go on and build the franchise company. So that's what I did. And I believe that that's a huge benefit. I mean, franchisors are basically running two businesses, right? They're running their business model business, their brick and mortar, whatever the business is. And then when you start franchising, you're also then running the business of franchising. And so I became an expert in our brick and mortar business. And then I learned the franchising business as the years rolled on.
Okay. So you're kind of perfecting a model, and so you decide, okay, we're gonna make this bigger. And did you, where did you move next to was it an adjacent store, and did you try to document your processes at that point and then, expand and get a new owner, or did you open the stores yourself with Mike?
So it was a combination. So I think the smartest thing for franchisors to do is to have stores in multiple markets before they begin franchising. We did not necessarily have that. So we had to learn a little bit more as we went. How does our business model perform in different markets? So we did both. We began the franchise company, like I said, and we partnered with a franchise sales organization who helped us market and vet franchisees coming into the system. At the same time, Mike and I also opened a second corporate location in New Jersey, which was a completely different market, so that we also began running tests there, so that we had a second store where we could really understand, what are the updated build out processes? How does marketing work in a different market? Yes, we had to document all of our operational procedures, and we hired, professional people to come in and do that. And I think it's part of probably one of the biggest reasons why, we were able to get to 100 locations plus at this point, which is rare for a brand to get to, is because I did recognize early on what I didn't know. And, of course, franchisors have to have the capital and the resources, as well as the awareness to go and hire professional people, particularly in the franchising world, to make sure that you're really setting the stage for the business model to grow and the franchising business to grow properly from the beginning.
Right. So you actually hired out your playbooks and processes stuff as you made them, and they were documented clearly, and that was a huge sort of base from which you could actually franchise your stores. Sounds like.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, and I will say, and our early franchisees will probably agree with me here. The first couple of years are everything was written the back of a napkin. I mean, literally, I have, things that are original versions of logos and operating and ideas written in the notes of our phone or on literally on napkins or a legal pad. And I think that's part of the charm of it, but we tried to transition that pretty early on to more professional platforms.
Right. So, and this is something that's very interesting because I thought, prior to, around 2010, 2015, wasn't really a big industry in terms of, daycare for dogs. It hadn't been certainly institutionalized to any extent. So how has the pet care market changed since you started? And what role did COVID play in accelerating demand and acceptance of the concept?
Yeah, this is a great question because even when I got into this in 2013, pet care, doggy daycare concepts, outside of maybe a competitor or two of ours, were unheard of. When we opened a corporate store in 2017 in Atlantic City, New Jersey, nobody in the community understood what doggy daycare was. I did not know that until we got into some of these smaller markets. And so when we first started, especially when Mike opened the first store back in 2001, the concept just didn't exist. The industry didn't even exist. So it's been really fascinating to watch the industry evolve over the last 13 plus years. And so, especially out here on Long Island, we had almost no competitors until post COVID. So COVID was an absolute blessing for the pet care industry, from my perspective. It also brought a lot of competition into the industry because what happened is people realized during COVID that the pet care industry is basically, for the most part, recession resilient. And so when recession hits, when money gets tight, people will generally spend money on a couple things: kids, elder care, and dogs. And so they won't necessarily cut their spending on their pets. And we saw that when the housing market crashed in 2008. Mike had the one kind of training center, doggy daycare, open then, and it actually drove business. And so we had that historical data in our system. And so we knew once COVID hit, it would be a similar economic outcome for our brand. And that's exactly what happened. It really helped accelerate our growth. Of course, after the first 6 months of challenge and keeping stores open and making sure we were working correctly with the government to be aligned with all the requirements. But it really brought it boomed the pet care industry.
Yeah, yeah. And I don't think dogs got COVID, did they?
No, but there was one article that one of our franchisees sent me where it was speculated, basically some sort of hype, silly nonsense that dogs carried COVID. And thankfully that ended up being disproven. But
Yeah.
no.
So you were probably in the safest place in Long Island with your dogs.
We were. And the other thing was, our stores, we only have 2 or 3 employees in each of our stores. And so we were able, to follow all the safety guidelines, and customers felt comfortable coming into our stores. And for the most part, I like to liken us to Target. We're sort of like the Target of the pet care industry, Houndstown is. A lot of our competitors are they're opening these beautiful but like higher end, higher cost pet care facilities that really cater more to the owner than the dog. And so ours are very simple build out models. They're still beautiful, of course, but they really cater exclusively to the dog. And so, a lot of our customers are teachers and firefighters and police officers and nurses. So they were people who didn't have the luxury of staying home. So they actually needed our services more during COVID than they had before. So.
Right, and that's interesting because those people were going to work. They had to go to work. They were first responders, and your price point attracts those type of people because you didn't invest as heavily and didn't have to charge as much. So that made the pandemic kind of a perfect storm for your business. Wow, that's really cool. So we're skating along, and now you're at, I think you said 101 locations as of this month. So what had to change inside the company as Houndstown grew from this founder-led into this scalable franchise system?
Wow, that's also a good question. So much had to change. I think. I think that the most responsible entrepreneurs, and this goes for franchisors and any business owner, the most responsible entrepreneurs create businesses that don't rely on them. And I recognize that early on. I think it takes a lot of self-awareness and humility to be able to open up that path and make sure that is how the franchise really evolves. And so early on, I recognize that I'm not an expert in franchising. I would call myself an expert in the Houndstown business model, but franchising is complicated, complex. It's involves a lot of legal responsibility, and so I recognized early on that I needed a team to run the franchise business. And I learned, of course, a tremendous amount. And also post-COVID, once we got through COVID, we had about 18 stores open. I recognized the need to hire someone who really could come in and build the systems and processes and hire the team that could make this brand scalable without chaos.
Mhm.
Because I'd never wanted to risk any franchisees success because we needed to test something in a market, or we didn't know something and we're still opening stores when we're not an expert in what we're doing in terms of like the franchising business. So I hired people early on, and I stepped out earlier than I probably maybe thought I should is some days, but it was the best thing I think that I could have done.
So I'm assuming when you say you hired somebody, you really brought in a COO to run the franchise part of the business, really the kind of the business end versus the model, which you were an expert in. And I've explored this on other podcasts. It's that CEO, COO, or visionary second in command, whatever you want to call it, relationship. And you realized where your blind spots were in that C-suite role, and you said, okay, I need to go find somebody that complements me, what I like to do and what I'm really good at. And you brought in somebody that could handle the franchise business end of things. And that you're right, that's self-awareness, but it's also a great choice because, those things need to get done and you had an expertise and you found somebody who complimented you. I think that's great. Very, very, very smart and probably speeded. I'm guessing it speeded your rollout.
It really did. It honestly really did because and you're right, I hired a COO who ended up moving into the CEO seat a year and a half ago when I stepped out. And it turns out that was his dream. That was his, dream career path. And, as franchisor, I was always so focused on our franchisees and responsibility to the brand. And we also have, between our corporate store and we call it Townie HQ, I have 20 to 30 people that work for me on and their careers to keep in mind. And
Mhm.
I'm proud that Houndstown has been a place of employment for them and for people to grow in their franchising careers, their dog management career, in the pet care space. So absolutely, like, hiring somebody to complement you and that knows more than you in the areas that need that is absolutely critical to responsible franchise growth.
Mm. So one of the corollaries, which you probably weren't thinking of in 2013 or even 2020, was that the business as it ends up is very attractive in terms of valuation, and it has great enterprise value. Things that investors like: recurring revenue, brand, unit economics, growth. What as you look at it today, what do you see that makes Houndstown really attractive to investors or potential owners?
Yeah, and in my years of experience doing this and bringing on some amazing franchisees to, help us expand the brand, it's two things to me. It's the simplicity of the business model, coupled with, well, I guess three things. I will say people love working with dogs. We get a lot of folks that are coming from corporate America and they've gotten laid off after their dedication to a company for 20 or 30 years, and they've got another 10 or 15 years of professional life in them, and they want to do something where they feel like they have control of their own lives and their own destiny. And
Mhm.
franchising is an amazing vehicle for that. So it's the simplicity of the business model coupled with people really being attracted to working with dogs. And then also the fact that the pet care industry in general is recession resilient. It really has some wonderful, I think, financial potential for folks, even when times get tough economically.
Right. So if I were to look at it and just to sort of prove the recurring revenue aspect of it, when you get a client who comes in, say it's a firefighter or someone else, obviously we know how long dogs live, but is your average customer like a 5-year customer? Or tell me what the customer base really looks like in that recurring revenue sort of concept.
Yeah, it's you're right. So this is pet care is a very emotional business, right? We have a dog, and the number one thing that as a pet owner I want when I'm looking for someone to help me take care of the dog is trust and a place that is going to treat a dog like family. And that is one of the things that we do really, really well because we have such a strong culture and we are still kind of founder led in a way. We don't have like a corporate culture to what we do. And that translates really well into the stores too. So most of our franchisees are in the stores running their own businesses, or if they're not running the day to day, they're out there in the community building relationships. So it's a very relationship and referral driven business. So, of course, the first couple of years, franchisees need to invest in marketing to really get the business going. But as the years go on, like in my store, my corporate store, the original one from 2001, it's been open for 20 plus years. We barely have to invest in marketing anymore because all of our customers they're not only lifelong customers, but we've seen them with, 2 or 3 different generations of pets. And then they go and they refer their neighbors and their friends and their family. And it's really a community centric business. So if we're doing our jobs right, we're creating that organic referral network that really drives a lot of business to
Yeah.
each of our stores.
So minimal churn, great referral, networking. Are the stores like, are they turning away dogs now, or are we just, it's still, are most of the stores full, or how many dogs do you take? I don't even know in a location in a day.
It depends on the size of the
Right.
store, but if we're using our corporate store in Ronkonkoma as an example, it's about 4,500 square feet. We can have about 100 to 110 dogs a day
Oh
in the
my
store.
gosh.
That is
Wow.
because of the talent of our team, and every single dog in the facility it should be grouped or is grouped in one of our 5 play groups. And so we're not doing things like separating dogs or rotating them. That's where you kind of create more chaos in the day to day and kind of disrupt the packs. So yeah, we never turn dogs away. So what will happen though is the height of summer when schools are out, Christmas break, a lot of folks are traveling and they need to use us for boarding. We do sometimes get full, especially for our more mature stores. Like there are only a certain amount of dogs that can be, that can stay with us overnight. And so we'll
Mhm.
get full for that, and there will be wait lists for sure. But
Mhm.
for daycare, we never turn a dog away from daycare. We want our customers to be able to just conveniently walk into a location and drop the dog off. So we don't want to create any barriers of entry for, you've got to hop on the 5:38 train in the morning. You shouldn't need to make a reservation the night before. We want you to just drop the dog off. So we
Right.
never turned a
Just,
dog away for daycare.
just make it easy. Just,
Make it
hey,
easy and
yeah.
simple.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that's great. So you could be last minute. Oh, nobody's going at home to cover the base.
that's right.
Great, great. So let's talk about this step to the owner's box because it's interesting. It sounds like you elevated your COO to CEO, and I want to talk a little bit about, does that person encapsulate both the visionary side of things as well as, or did he or she elevate somebody to be COO underneath? I'm kind of interested in that aspect of it.
Yeah, so Rob Flanagan is our CEO, and I've known him for many, many years. He's well known in the franchising industry. And so when I hired him in 2021 as my COO, really my strategic partner, I really hired him in to work with Mike and I on our vision, on our strategy, and on the execution of the plan to get there. And so he's been in on the ground floor for many years. And the key here, I think, is the relationship building and the trust that someone like that builds with founders, so that by the time I felt ready to step out of running the day to day, I was completely comfortable with the team running my business.
Hmm. Hmm.
That took 3 years or longer to build. And so it's been an interesting move, but I think one that is, for me at least, it was the right thing to do, is the most responsible thing for me to do, to really keep Houndstown going and to keep the vision going, and for me to be able to focus on 50,000 foot view.
Hmm.
And what is our, where do we want to be in 10 years at Houndstown? Those things are really the responsibility of the founder, the owner, is to keep their eye on the long-term goals and not worry about, what's happening in the day-to-day as
Yeah.
much.
So I applaud you because, coaching founders all the time and their teams, many say they want the business to run without them, but few actually get there. And you've been able to do that. And you sort of just, explain what had to be done for you to be able to step up. So you're focusing now, what role do you have, or what, when they say, what's your functional role now? Is it just that big strategy and that big picture, 50,000 foot view, and where the company's going? Is that really what your role is today? And what else do you do from the owner's box seat?
Yeah, I mean, it's the owner's box is a lovely place that allows you to really step out and look at your accomplishments. And I sometimes I joke, it feels like I have a kid that's in college and I'm just watching them thrive. And my job is to step in and catch anything big that needs attention. But 99% of the time, like my team that I stay in very close communication with, by the way, they're doing a great job. And so I don't have to worry about it. And what this allows me is the freedom that franchising promises franchisees, right? It's freedom of
Yeah,
time, freedom financially, and it's freedom to go and do other things in life that might be my passion. And so I love telling the story at our approval days, that we have once a month for new prospective franchisees, because I say I'm trying to kind of sell to you what I've achieved, which is the ability to step out of my business and have it run successfully with my overview, of course, and my participation. But it's only a couple hours a week at this point. But you've got to put in the hard work to be able to get there.
right, right. So you really want to clone your experience for your franchisees is really
I
what it sounds
do.
like.
I
Yeah.
love, that's a great term, cloning the experience, because just like I started out 13 years ago working in the store at 6 o'clock in the morning. Now my journey now, the arc has
Mhm.
allowed me to step out, move my way up to the top. And I don't like asking franchisees to do anything that I haven't done myself. So I like being the example for them on what's possible.
Oh, excellent. So that gets right into your next chapter, which is you built and scaled Houndstown. And what kind of company or founder do you think could benefit most from your experience as you look to expand what you're doing?
Yeah, as we got to store 100 with Houndstown, it was a very big milestone moment, just psychologically and emotionally for me. And so the last couple months, it has really allowed me the freedom to start thinking about what is my next career move. When I founded Houndstown, I wasn't thinking about this. I thought Houndstown was it was so much work from the beginning. I didn't know that, a couple decade later, I might be thinking about the next evolution of my career. But as I've been allowed the space to do that, it's like, how do I now turn around and go help other founders do what Houndstown has just done? And how can I help founders do that without losing themselves, without, having those 4 a.m. thoughts at night, the anxiety and the stress, and all the realities that come along with founding and scaling a business. And, I think if my journey can help any other person, any other founder, be successful in any of those areas, then all of my own 4 a.m. nights will have been worth it.
Right, right. So it sounds like the next chapter for you is to sort of, you know, give yourself to or make yourself available to that next franchisor or potential franchisor who's or even franchisee for that matter, who's building a business and you'd want to accompany them and guide them on that journey. Is that what you're looking at as your next chapter?
Yeah, that seems most aligned and or organic expansion of my experience in brand building and business building. So I'm kind of actively talking to other founders who are in this position where they've got a great concept, they've got a great idea, they've got the brand has great potential, and they just need help understanding how. How do I get there? How do I do this without compromising myself, my family, my relationships, my personal life. It's a complicated thing. And so that is what I am focused on now, is helping other people do the same thing.
Okay. So since that's what you're doing, if you were advising a founder trying to grow from 10 or 20 units to, 100 or whatever, Nirvana looks like, what would you tell them to focus on first from your experience?
Hiring in your right hand man or woman. It's a game changer. Start building the relationship that needs to be built so that you feel comfortable taking a day off or 2 days off. I see a lot of our franchisees kind of struggling with this too, right? Because they're in the store building the business the first 6 months, the first year. And especially since our businesses, they're so heavily relied on the franchisee being the face of the business. It's really hard to know when to step out of that and how to hand the keys over to someone else to run the store just as well as you would. So it takes preparation and foresight to be able to really make that alignment so that when you step out, the business doesn't crumble.
Mm, yeah. And that's, yeah, it's mentoring, it's some playbooks, it's a lot of combination of things allowing you so you can step away and now you're stepping away all but 2 hours a week, which is, obviously, complete. So, very
Yeah.
good.
Yeah.
Well, I love Jackie that you've shared your whole story and how it started and the success you've been able to generate in 13 short years to go from one to 101 is awesome and that you're in a position now to sort of complete it and go full circle and help others do the same thing. I think is laudable and I love it. So we'll leave it there and thank you so much for sharing the story. And the industry, by the way, is something that, I think is going to be, is going to lead to a nice outcome for you should you ever want to move it. It's a very predictable business and I think very attractive one for investors. So love that aspect too. So thank you for your time this morning. And to the audience, we will see you again for the next episode of On the Entrepreneur's Journey. Thanks,
Thanks.
Jack.